Hi everybody, I hope you're okay. Let me first say sorry for being so late with this video. I've been very busy. I've been painting this room grey, making it all nice and fresh, and I've been to see my mum and dad, and I've been very busy. But I'm back for the next chapter of the BFG. And last time we saw that the giant BFG and Sophie, they put a horrible nightmare into the ear of one of the giants, and it caused him to have a big panic, and all the giants started fighting each other. But now the BFG and Sophie have gone back into the BFG's cave, and we're going to hear about some dreams today. The big friendly giant was seated at the great table in his cave, and he was doing his homework. Sophie sat there cross-legged on the table, watching him as he worked. The glass jar containing the one and only good dream that they'd caught that day stood between the BFG and Sophie. And the BFG, with great care and patience, was printing something on a piece of paper with an enormous pencil. "What are you writing?" Sophie asked him. "Every dream is having a special label on its bottle," the BFG said. "How else would I be finding the one I'm wanting in a hurry?" "But can you really and truly tell what sort of a dream is going to be simply by listening to it?" "I can," the BFG said, not looking up from his work. "But how? Is it by the way it hums and buzzes?" "You is less or more right. Every dream in the world is making a different sort of buzzy hum music. And these grand swashbuckling ears of mine is able to hear that music." "By music, do you mean little tunes?" "No, he's not meaning tunes." "Then what do you mean?" "Human beings is having their own music, left or right." "That's right, lots of music," Sophie replied. "Sometimes human beings is very overcome when they is hearing wondrous music. They's getting shivers down their spindles, right or left." "That's right," Sophie said. "So the music is saying something to them. It's sending a message. I do not think human beings is knowing what the message is, but they is loving the message just the same." "Yeah, that sounds about right," Sophie said. "But because of these squiffling big ears of mine, I's not only able to hear that music that dreams is making, but I is understanding it too." "What do you mean you understand it?" "I can read it. It talks to me. It's like its own language." "I find that very hard to believe," Sophie said. "I'll bet you is finding it hard to believe, you squogwinkles. And I bet you is finding it hard to believe how they's visited us from the stars." "Of course I don't believe that," Sophie said. And the BFG regarded her gravely with those huge eyes of his. "I hope you'll forgive me if I tell you that human beings is thinking they is very clever, but they's not. They's nearly all of them not muchers and squip peeps." "I beg your pardon," Sophie said. "The matter with human beings is they absolutely refusing to believe in anything unless they's actually seeing it right in front of their own schnozzles. Of course, quogswinkles is existing. I's meeting them oftenly. I's chittering to them." And he turned away contemptuously from Sophie. And he resumed his work writing on the labels. Sophie moved over to read what he was writing on that label. The letters were printed big and bold, but not very neatly. And here's what the first one said. "This dream is about how I is saving my teacher from drowning. I is diving into the river from a high bridge, and I is dragging my teacher to the bank, and then I is giving him the kiss of death." And a little picture of a teacher drowning in the water, can you see? And this is a dream he's writing down. "The kiss of what?" Sophie asked. And the BFG stopped writing and raised his head. I was telling you once before, I is never having a chance to go to school. I is full of mistakes. It's not my fault, I do my best. You's a lovely little girl, Sophie, but please remember, you is not exactly Miss Know Everything yourself. I'm sorry, Sophie said, I really am. It's very rude of me to keep correcting you. And the BFG gazed at her a little while longer, and then he bent his head down to his slow, laborious writing again. Tell me, honestly, Sophie said, if you blew this dream into my bedroom when I was asleep, would I really and truly start dreaming about how I saved my teacher from drowning by diving off a bridge? More than that, a lot more. But I cannot be squilling the whole grub-flunkling dream onto a titchy little bit of paper now, can I? Of course there's more. And the BFG laid down his pencil and placed one massive ear right close to the jar. Yeah, this dream is continuing very nice. Yeah, it has a very hoary hunky-dunky-dory ending. Really? How does it end? Please tell me. Well, you would be dreaming that the morning after you was saving the teacher from drowning in the river, you was arriving at school and you was seeing all 500 pupils sitting in the assembly hall, all the teachers as well, and the head teacher is standing up and saying, I was wanting the whole school to give 3 cheers for Sophie, because she is so brave, saving the life of our fine teacher, Mr. Figgins, who was unfortunately pushed off the bridge into the river by our gym teacher, Miss Amelia Upscotch. So 3 cheers everybody for Sophie. And then the whole school is cheering like mad, shouting bravo and well done. And forever after that, even when you was getting your sums all gun-swiggled up and muddled up, Mr. Figgins, he's always giving you 10 out of 10. And he's writing, good work Sophie, on your work. And then he was waking up. Oh, I like the sound of that dream, Sophie said. Course you like it. It's a fizz wizard. And he licks the back of the label and sticks it onto the jar. I was usually writing a bit more than this on the labels, but you was watching me, making me jumpsy. Well, I can go and sit somewhere else if you like, Sophie said. No, don't go. Look in that jar there carefully. I think you'll be able to see this dream. Sophie peered into the jar. Sure enough, she saw the faint, translucent outline of something about the size of a hen's egg. And it was the colour of a pale sea green, soft and shimmering and very beautiful. There it lay, this small, oblong sea green jellyish thing sitting at the bottom of the jar, peaceful but pulsing gently. And the whole of it was moving in and out as though it were breathing. It's moving, Sophie said. It's alive. Of course it is alive. What do you feed it on? Sophie said. Oh, it's not needed any food, the BFG told her. But that's cruel. Everything alive needs some food of some sort. Even trees and plants need food. The north wind is alive. It's moving. It touches you on the cheek and the hands, but nobody's feeding the wind. Sophie was silent. This extraordinary giant was disturbing her ideas up here. He seemed to be leading her towards mysteries that were beyond her understanding. No, a dream is not needing anything, the BFG went on. If it is a good one, it is waiting peaceably forever and ever until I release it and allow it to do its job. If it is a bad one, it's always fighting to get out of the jar. And the BFG stood up and walked over to one of the many, many shelves along the wall, and he placed that latest jar up amongst the thousands of other jars. Please, can I see some of your other dreams? Sophie asked. The BFG hesitated. Nobody has ever seen them before. Perhaps after all, I is letting you have just a little peep. and he picked her up off the table and stood it on the palm of his huge hand, and he carried it over towards the shelves. Over here is some of the good dreams, the fizz wizards. Would you hold me a bit closer so I can have a better look? Sophie said. Oh, now my labels is only telling bits of the dream, remember. The dreams is usually much longer. The labels is just there to remind me. And Sophie started to read some of the labels. The first one seemed pretty long. It went right around the outside of the jar, and as she read it, she had to keep turning the jar around to keep reading it. And this is what it said on the label. Today I is sitting in class and I discover that if I is staring very hard at my teacher in a special way, I is able to put her to sleep. So I keep staring at her, and in the end her head drops onto her desk and she goes fast asleep. Snorkles loudly, and then in marches the head teacher and he shouts, "Wake up, Miss Plumridge, how dare you go to sleep in class? Go fetch your hat and coat and leave this school forever, you is sacked." But in a jiffy I is putting the head teacher to sleep as well. And he just crumples slowly to the floor like a lump of jelly, and he lies there in a heap and starts snorkeling even louder than Miss Plumridge. And there's a picture of the head teacher falling asleep on the floor. Can you imagine Mrs. Hunter just falling on the floor asleep? You better not put Mr. Green to sleep. And then I is hearing my mummy's voice saying to me, "Wake up, breakfast's ready." And that's the end of that dream, isn't it? "What a funny dream," Sophie said. "Ha, it's a ring beller, that is a wopsy," the BFG said. Inside the jar, just below the edge of the label, Sophie could see that putting to sleep dream lying peacefully at the bottom of the jar, pulsing gently, sea green like the other one, but perhaps a little trifle larger. Do you have separate dreams for boys and for girls?" Sophie asked. Of course I do. If I is giving a girl's dream to a boy, even if it's a wopsy girl's dream, the boy will be waking up thinking it was a rot bungling, glick sludging old dream that was." Do you think that's right? Do you think boys and girls have different dreams? I wonder. Now here, these here is all girls' dream on this shelf over here, the BFG said. "Okay, could I read a boy's dream then?" "You can." And he lifted it up to a higher shelf, and the label on the nearest boy's dream jar read just like this. "I is making myself a marvellous pair of suction boots. When I put them on, I is able to walk straight up the kitchen wall and across the ceiling." And there's a little picture of a boy, look, standing with his suction boots stuck to the ceiling. Would you like to do that? I would. "So I is walking upside down on the ceiling when my big sister comes in, and she is starting to yell at me, as she always does. Yelling, 'What on earth is you doing up there walking on the ceiling?' And I looks down at her and I smiles. I says, 'I told you, you was driving me up the wall, didn't I? Well, now you has done it.'" "I find that dream rather silly," Sophie said. "Well, a boy wouldn't. It's another ring beller. Perhaps you've seen enough of them now, eh?" "Maybe let me read another one for a boy," Sophie said. And the next label on the next jar said this. "The telephone rings in our house. My father picks it up and says in his very important telephone voice, 'Simpkins speaking.' And then his face goes white and his voice goes all funny and he says, 'What? Who?' And then he says, 'Yes, sir, I understand, sir, but surely is it me who's wishing to speak to, not my little son?' And the father's face is going from white to dark purple. He is gulping like he has a lobster stuck in his throat. And then at last he is saying, 'Yes, sir, very well, sir, I will get him, sir.' And he turns to me and he says in a rather respectful voice, 'Is you knowing the President of the United States?' And I says, 'No, but I expect he's hearing about me.' And then I was having a long talk on the phone saying things like, let me take care of it, Mr. President, or you'll bungle it all if you do it your way. And my father's eyes is goggling like mad right out of his head. That is when I was hearing my father's real voice saying, get up, you lazy fool, you're going to be late for school. And there's a picture of a little boy on the phone to the president in his dream. Boy dreams are crazy, Sophie said. Let me read this next one. And Sophie read another label on another jar in the cave. I is having a bath and I is discovering that if I press quite hard on my tummy button, a funny feeling comes over me and suddenly my legs is not there anymore, or my arms. In fact, I has become absolutely invisible all over. That sounds like a fun dream. I'm still there, but no one can see me, not even myself. So my mummy comes in, says, where is that child? He was in a bath a minute ago, he can't possibly have vanished himself. So I says, here I is. And she says, where? And I says, here. And she says, where? And I says, here. And she shouts, Henry, come up quick, will you? And when my daddy rushes in, I is washing myself, and my daddy just sees the soap floating around in the air. But of course he's not seeing me. And he shouts, where are you, boy? I says, here. And he says, where? And I say, here. And he says, where? And I say, here. And he says, that's soap. The soap, boy, it's flying around in the air. And I press my tummy button again. Boop. And now I is visible again. And my daddy, he's squiffy with excitement. He says, you's the invisible boy. And I says, now I is really going to have some fun. And so, when I was out of the bath, I've dried myself, put on my dressing gown and slippers, I press my tummy button again, boop, and I was going invisible again, and then I go down into the town and walk around the streets. Of course, only I is invisible, not the things I was wearing, so people is seeing a dressing gown and slippers walking along round the street. And people is screaming, a ghost, it's a ghost! People is screaming, left and right, and a big strong policeman is running for their lives. Best of all, I sees Mr. Grummett, my teacher, coming out of a pub, and I float right up to him and I say, boo! And he lets out a frightsome howl and he dashes right back into the pub. And then I is waking up feeling happy as a whiff squiddler. That's pretty ridiculous, Sophie said. All the same, she couldn't resist just reaching down and pressing her own tummy button just to see if it worked. You have a go. It worked for me. But nothing happened to Sophie. Yeah, dreams, you know, is very mystical things, the BFG said. And even human beings is not understanding them. Not even the brainiest professors is understanding them. Now, have you seen enough of my dreams? Just this one last one. This one here. And she started reading this dream. I has written a book and it is so exciting nobody can put it down, and as soon as you has read this first line of this book, you's hooked and you cannot stop until you finish the last page. In all the cities, people is walking in the streets bumping into each other because their face is buried in my book. Dentist is reading it and trying to fill teeth at the same time, but nobody minds because they's all reading it too, even in the dentist's chair. Drivers is reading it while they're driving their cars and then crashing all over the place. Brain surgeons is reading the book while they is operating on brains, and airline pilots is reading it as they go into Timbuktu instead of London because they're not watching where they're going. Football players is reading it on the football field because they can't put it down. So is Olympic runners while they're running. Everybody has to see what is going on in my book. And when I wake up, I'm still tingling all over with the excitement at being the greatest writer of books the world has ever known. Until my mummy comes in, says I was looking at your English exercise last night, and really your spelling is atrocious, you know, and your punctuation. So really, She needs to practice her writing to be able to write a fantastic book like that. That is enough for now, the BFG said. There is dillions more dreams here. My arm's getting tired holding you up, you know. What about all those over there, though? Sophie said. Why have those ones got such tiny labels? Ah, that's because one day, as catching so many dreams I wasn't having time or energy to write out big long labels for them. There's enough there to just remind me about them. Can I have a look? Sophie said. Oh, the long-suffering BFG carried her over to those jars, and she read quickly, rapidly, one after another. Dream 1. I is climbing Mount Everest with just my pussycat for company. There. I is inventing a car that runs on toothpaste. Like that. I is able to make the electric lights go on and off just by wishing it. Like that. I is only 8 years old, little boy, but I is growing a splendid bushy beard. All the other boys is jealous. Well, there is the big bearded boy. And I is able to jump out of any high window and float down safely. Good pictures, eh? I has a pet bee that makes rock and roll music whenever it flies. There's the bee. What amazes me is how you ever learned to write like this in the first place, Sophie said. Ah, I've been wondering how long it would take you to ask me that. Well, you never went to school. I think it's quite marvellous. How did you learn? The BFG crossed over and found a tiny secret door in the wall, and he took out from there a book, a very old and tattered book. By human standards, it was a normal, ordinary-sized book, but in the giant's hand, it looked like a tiny postage stamp. One night, I was blowing a dream through a window, and I sees this book lying on the boy's table. I wanted it so badly. I wouldn't steal it. I'd never do that. Well, how did you get it then? Sophie asked. I just borrowed it, the BFG said, smiling out. Just for a short time I borrowed it. And how long have you had it? Perhaps only 80 years. Soon I will go put it back. 80 years. And that's how you taught yourself to write, by reading the book. I was reading hundreds of times. And I was reading this book, I was still reading it and teaching myself new words all the time and how to write them down. It is the most scrumdiddlyumptious story, you know. And Sophie looked at the book. Nicholas Nickleby, she read out loud. Ah, by Dahl's Chickens, the BFG said. By who? But just then there came a tremendous noise galloping outside the cave. What's that? Sophie said. Ah, that'll be the giants flipping off to another country to guzzle up human beings. And he quickly popped Sophie into his waistcoat pocket again, and they went over to the entrance and rolled back the stone. Sophie peeped out and saw through her spy hole all of the giants, the fearsome 9 giants, coming past them at a full gallop. Where is you off to tonight? The BFG shouted. Ha! We's off flush bunking to England tonight, Fleshlum Peter answered as they went galloping over. England's a lunctious land and we's fancying a nice few English chidlers tonight. Ah, I is guzzling a giggle house full of girls, and I knows where the boggle box full of boys, shouted the gizzard gulper. All I have to do is reach in and grab myself a handful of English boys. They's tasting extra liquishy. In a few seconds, the giants were all galloped out of sight and gone. What did he mean? A giggle house for girls? He's meaning a girls' school. He'll eat them by the bundle. Oh no. And a boys' school too, the BFG said. Oh, it mustn't happen. We've got to stop them. We can't just sit here and let them do it. Not a thing we can do, said the BFG. We's helpless as horse feathers. And he sat down on a large rock near the entrance to his cave. He took Sophie out of his pocket now and put her down beside him. It's quite safe now for you to be outside till they's coming back. And the sun had dipped down below the horizon. It was now getting dark. And that's the end of that chapter. That was a long chapter, wasn't it? But we learned about lots of different dreams. And now the giants are off to England to look for little chiddlers to eat. So be careful out there. Don't forget, it's just a story. They're not real. Right, I will see you soon for the next part of the BFG. See you soon. Bye.